Hey everybody, Eric Grenier here with Philippe J. Fournier for this week's episode of The Numbers. And Philippe, how are you doing this week? Well, I guess it's the end of the week. How's the week been?
The week has been... good morning, Eric, and good morning, everybody. The week has been very busy because there was another Quebec poll this week, and so I did my media rounds. We have lots of numbers to talk about, not just in Quebec, but of course throughout the country. We have Western provinces numbers, we have federal numbers, and also we have numbers on what's going on in the world, and there's plenty going on right now, including both leaders of the main federal parties traveling abroad, which is new, at least for one of them. So, where would you like to start today, Eric?
Yeah, I think it's going to be with the spring break trips that both Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre have taken this week. It is strange to see both of the leaders, the opposition leader and the prime minister, abroad at the same time, especially the leader of the opposition. That's not something we see that often. And it does seem to be... these trips are fraught with risk. We can always remember what happened with Justin Trudeau when he went abroad.
India, yeah.
He went to India, the polls started tanking. Like, things can happen when you go abroad. So we've seen that Mark Carney has been touring some of, especially around Asia. He was in India, he was in Australia. I believe today he's on his way to Japan. And at the same time, Pierre Poilievre decided to head to Europe, and he's been in Germany and the United Kingdom. What's, I think, interesting about both of these trips and the way that we can kind of tackle them is that they are both trips that have to do with these leaders hoping to get some wins. Mark Carney is going abroad to try to get trade deals. Yep. That is what he promised, diversifying our foreign trade. Pierre Poilievre, I think, is going abroad to try to get some wins on the international stage to kind of reduce the gap between him and Carney on the statesmanship file. But I think both of these are pretty risky and fraught in that sense. First of all, I think let's just take a second with Pierre Poilievre and his trips, and then we'll get into Mark Carney because there's a bit more to chew on there. This is one of the things he has to close the gap on Mark Carney with.
I mean, this cannot... I mean, you say it's fraught with risk. Yeah, there's always risk. But for Pierre Poilievre, this can be only beneficial, right? The only risk is that people could, dig up unearthed comments that he made about, Mark Carney is a globetrotter and we should stay at home to take care of what's going on here. Well, yeah, but if you're a world leader, or if you're even the leader of the opposition and the prime minister in waiting, as you label yourself, you have to meet with leaders of other countries, allies, especially in Germany and the UK are certainly ones. And so I think this is a great initiative by Poilievre. I'm not sure it will have an effect here, but if you bet on the long term, this can only be good. It's much riskier for Mark Carney because, as you said, it was an election promise last year that he would diversify trade. And so that means you have to travel a lot, go to places where we're not necessarily completely allies with. There's always tension. India, I mean, we went to China last month and India this time. But this is what he promised. And so if he comes back empty-handed, the risk is much greater for Mark Carney, I believe. What's your take on this?
Yeah, well, I think that this is one of the issues where we've seen the biggest divide between Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre in terms of public opinion. If you look at the polling that Abacus Data put out, I think over the weekend, and they broke it down, as they often do, by political support based on what is one of your top issues. So the way that Abacus does is that they ask for your top 3 issues and go from there, rather than just making you choose one, which I think is a good thing because humans are complicated beings, and we can often have multiple priorities at the same time. But if you look at 2 of the biggest issues, cost of living and the economy, on cost of living, the Liberals were ahead in terms of voting intentions, 39% to 36% over the Conservatives, effectively a tie. Yeah. On the economy, the Conservatives were ahead 42 to 39. Again, effectively a tie on those 2 issues. So on those domestic issues that are really important for a lot of voters, the Conservatives are competitive. Yep. And then among those who said that Donald Trump and the U.S. administration is a top 3 issue, the Liberals are leading by 55%. The Conservatives have 17%. Yeah. So if your main issue is this overriding kind of foreign policy issue, and it is for a big chunk of the electorate,
Yeah.
The Conservatives are not even in the game whatsoever. Like, this is one of the starkest divides you see on any issue.
Yeah.
So for Pierre Poilievre, I mean, he can't really go to the United States exactly and, chum around with a lot of the people in the Trump administration.
Yeah.
That would probably be a problem, considering that any kind of similarities between him and Trump we saw in the last election does not bode well.
And
but going to Germany,
already
going
did
to the
that,
United Kingdom,
Yeah.
bit safer.
Yeah.
He didn't meet with, as far as I'm aware, Reform in the UK or the AfD in Germany. So staying with kind of the traditional conservative parties and those kinds of allies, making speeches in friendly rooms. I just saw a headline like today. It was about Pierre Poilievre pitching, I think, LNG to Germany or something. It was the kind of headline in an alternate universe we would have seen from Prime Minister Pierre Poilievre.
Absolutely.
So I think it's an interesting thing that they're doing to try to kind of close that gap on statesmanship with Carney. Carney's clearly very comfortable going abroad. He spent a lot of his career abroad in these kinds of rooms. So I think Pierre Poilievre is just not trying to beat him on this, but just trying to not be completely out of the running, trying to not look like a prime minister as a potential prime minister in the future. So I think that's what the Conservatives are trying to do on that front. We'll see how successful it will be, but so far the headlines do seem to be relatively positive, and the trip seems to have gone pretty well so far.
That being said, though, I think you and I agree that for Pierre Poilievre, this is like long-term planning, right? Mm-hmm. You cannot really expect to have short-term gains from doing this because of everything that's happening in the world, and because that the spotlight mostly is on the prime minister. But yeah, if you want to be prime minister, it's good to pitch your case to other countries and make alliances. It's okay to do that, and I'm glad to see that. But regarding the numbers, what you just said, Trump being a top 3 issue for many Canadians, and the Liberals just sweeping the floor here. This number has to go down at some point, and I wonder whether it is the Conservatives who will go up or the Liberals who will go down if Kuzma is not, doesn't come back, because this is the year 2026 where it's supposed to be renewed, and we know the negotiations from the reports I've read from many sources, negotiations are not going that well, but they have time, and there's also like the midterms in the fall, which is a whole new other story, but it will be consequential for what's going on here for sure.
Yeah. So for the Prime Minister, his trip obviously is a little bit more higher stakes. It's global geopolitics and all this. Yep. He started off with India, got lots of questions about whether there was foreign interference from the Indian government in Canadian elections, and kind of tried to do his best not to step on any toes. Mm-hmm. We saw some polling that was from who did this one? I can't recall.
Angus Reid Institute, right?
Yeah, it was the Angus Reid Institute, right?
Yeah.
And it did kind of show how the India trip had some risk to it. Though a majority of Canadians said it was the right time to go do an official trip to Canada, 53%. 23% only said it was too soon or the trip shouldn't happen. I'd say that there was, this poll showed kind of mild support for it. Good trade is good, but India still, people are kind of cautious because you had 38% of Canadians saying that India should be approached in a cautious fashion, whereas 20% said they should be approached as either an enemy or a threat. But it was interesting to contrast that with how the Angus Reid Institute found Canadian views about the United States, where they had 49% saying that United States should be approached as either an enemy or a threat, and only 25% as a friend or an ally, 33% for India. So I think that what you could see from these kinds of numbers is that Canadians they're not wholly trusting of India, but they understand that in the current context with the United States, we need all the friends we can get. Yeah. And so I'm not sure if India will have hurt Carney that much, but I do think that the Iran issue is a little bit more fraught at the moment.
Well, here's the thing. Yeah, it's completely overshadowed. I just toured my media rounds. I went to all the newspapers' website this morning, La Presse in Quebec, and even National Post, which there's a new poll, National Post. We'll talk about it. But the Iran stuff is taking so much oxygen. So again, I think in the short term, we probably won't see an effect of those travels from M. Poilievre and M. Carney. This is planting seeds for long-term stuff. the I saw a clip of Lindsey Graham talking about a holy war. I mean, it's gonna get worse before it gets better. I don't want to get into this. I just wanted to mention it's taking so much oxygen, and I think many Canadians are following this. That perhaps what our leaders are doing with trade deals is not as a big a story as, of course, people dying and bombs blowing up. So
it's interesting though that both of these leaders, which would have planned these trips a long time ago, did it at this moment in a way, right? Because they're abroad as a lot of people's focus is abroad, which, you said earlier about how criticisms of Carney globetrotting and spending a lot of time overseas. Right now, a lot of Canadians, views or not views, attention is overseas. So the fact that our leaders are overseas is kind of interesting. On Iran, the numbers that we have to work with, there was a poll from the Angus Reid Institute. It was taken just kind of like after the first strikes happened. But I found that 34% of Canadians support the strikes by the United States and Israel on Iran. 49% oppose. So you got like more opposition than support, but it's not like a 80-20.
No, it's
but
not.
What was really interesting and why I think this is something that is really delicate from our Carney, Conservatives are supportive of the strike. 62% said they support it, 24% oppose. But Liberals, only 17% support, 69% oppose.
Yeah.
And Carney has, the statement from the government was at first, supportive of the strikes in a broad sense. We've heard Carney say that, he's supportive with regret, but not exactly a wholehearted, full-throated opposition to the strikes by any means. And that could put him offside with some of his own voters. So I'm curious if we're going to see any result from that. Or if, as we often see, people will change their views to match with the leader of the party that they agree with. This is something that is very common in public opinion. We see it on tons of issues. That as soon as a leader changes their position on something, a lot of people will then change their views. Which maybe it's just a persuasion thing. If the guy I like thinks this is a good thing, then I guess I should too. Maybe it's natural. But I think this is something we really need to watch.
Also, I mean, we cannot exclude that a lot of people don't have a strong opinion on this. They see the images and they really don't like it, but they saw what was going on in Iran in a grand scheme, and there's like, okay, maybe we don't want to bomb these people, but it's just that I don't think many liberal voters in that poll, or in general, have much faith in whatever Trump is doing. So
that's probably the driving force.
That doesn't help. And if from what the reports, and not Canadian reports, like American reports and people on the field saying the U.S. doesn't seem to have much of a plan. They figured, okay, we will bomb, and then we'll think about that later. Again, I'm not an expert. I don't want to pretend to be one, so I'll stay off this. Let's focus on public opinion. But if Mr. Carney was vague and a little in the gray zone, I think many Canadians are as well. And also, quarter of conservatives are oppose this. So, it's not, as you said, it's not an 80-20 issue. So.
Yeah, we'll see how this unfolds. I think your point about how the fact that it's Donald Trump who launched these might be the biggest kind of public opinion driver.
Oh, yeah.
Because as we've seen, what was the poll from a couple of weeks ago? It was 93% of liberals now have an unfavorable view of the United States. So anything they're doing is obviously going to be seen kind of badly. So the liberals have, they have some delicate way forward on this. The conservatives are trying to get themselves back into the game. And if we look at some of the federal polls that were out over the last week, not a lot of new numbers. Not a lot. Well, I should say not a lot of different numbers. We got actually quite a bit of new numbers.
Yeah.
But the liberals seem to have a lot of cushion to lose if they are in any danger. And the conservatives have a huge amount of ground to make up right now.
So this morning, the National Post, Léger, this is a monthly poll. The last one was in late January, so this was fielded end of February and early March. Voting intentions, my friend. Liberal, 49. That's pretty high.
That's high.
Conservative, 35, which is near their averages right now. NDP, 5.
Yeah.
Bloc, 5. In Ontario, Liberals lead by 16 points, 52-36. In Quebec, Liberals lead by 23 points, 48-25. 25 for the Bloc, of course. And the Conservatives are 20, so no much change here. British Columbia, smaller sample, but still 50 Liberal, 37 Conservatives. Satisfaction and approval holding around the 60% mark. And what's interesting in the satisfaction number, Léger shows the breakdown per region, like per province, except they of course they lump Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and the Atlantic provinces, above 50% satisfaction everywhere, which I don't remember seeing, even in the honeymoon of Trudeau. Have we seen that in recent decades? Like satisfaction above 50% everywhere? I can't find it if that's the case.
The poll from Léger is, we were kind of waiting for it to see what it would be, but
damn.
It is pretty stark. 14-point lead. Has anybody else? I've seen, there's been some 13.
The Léger, Main Street had 15.
Right.
51 to 36, which I don't want to say we scoffed at. We didn't scoff at it, but it was like, okay, this is a bit more than we expect. Now Léger has caught up. Of course, if Main Street shows a 20-point lead next week, it will be different. But 14 point is a lot, but how many seats is that, Eric? I mean,
That's
this is
220, 230. Man. It's got to be.
Wow.
I mean, if you're up 16 in Ontario, and you're up 14 in BC or 13 in BC, that's a huge majority. Tons of room for error. Now, we should say that the Léger poll, is on the one side of, I wouldn't say the wholly different side, but on the extreme side of it. We also had some new numbers from Ipsos. The Ipsos had an 8-point gap, only 5-point lead in Ontario, so not as, and it was tied in BC, so not as stark, but still an 8-point gap. Liaison came out earlier this week, had a 10-point lead for the Liberals, 43-33. Nanos has had a huge swing just in their last 2
Nanos
weeks
caught
of the
up.
rolling poll. 44 to 33, and then Abacus we had seen a little bit earlier, 44 to 38 for a 6-point lead. But Liaison had a 14-point lead for the Liberals in Ontario. Abacus had 9. So even though Abacus had the smallest national gap, in Ontario was still bigger than what we've seen in Ipsos. Like the Liberals are just so very clearly in majority territory, It is something to see, right? When you think about how far the party's come in about 14 months.
And this is not a honeymoon. The honeymoon was last summer. It went back down in the fall. So this is new world event satisfaction approval from a good chunk of voters that traditionally don't vote Liberal. And in that Léger poll, to go back to it again, satisfaction of the government from Conservative. Was it 25 or 24? A quarter of Conservatives are satisfied. It's 25, are satisfied with the Carney government. Now, it's a sample of 400 responses. It's not that small. It's a pretty reasonable sample. Among Bloc voters and NDP voters, these are much smaller sample. 55% satisfaction from Bloc voters, 70% from NDP voters. Now, you and I know that we have to be careful with a sample of 100 respondents. But still, you would think that NDP voters, which are, the left in Canada, right? Traditionally, more than 60% of them currently approve of the Carney government. This is incredible.
Right.
The Carney government is not leading, it's not governing on the left. Right? But some would say, no, center-left. It's debatable, but it's not governing on the left. Monsieur Carney pulls support from all parties. And you mentioned the Nanos poll, which we talk about it every week, obviously, because there is an update every week. But the gap in the preferred prime minister, we were wondering, the 20 points is a lot. Remember when it was 20 points? It was like, wow, that's a lot. A big lead for Mr. Carney. It's 34 points now. 22 Poilievre, 56 Carney. And he keeps going up. So what you said earlier about Poilievre going overseas and maybe trying to change the narrative that, he's a statement in waiting. Statesman. I have such trouble with that word. It could be part of it, but right now he's getting trounced by Carney's personal numbers.
It's the long game, really. Like you said, that this is not a short-term thing, right? Because it has to be the long game, because with this kind of gap, I mean, yeah, like you have to admit that if they had an election campaign right now, they would have to run, like the Liberals would have to run a pretty bad campaign at this stage to lose it.
Yeah.
Now, that could happen. We've seen that if you call an early election,
yes.
especially if you don't have a good reason for it, people can react poorly to that. We saw that in 2021 for Justin Trudeau. I've just been reading about the 1997 federal election. This is what I do. And Jean Chrétien went a little bit early in 97, and one of the top issues was that people didn't really understand why. And the Liberals nearly lost their majority in 97.
They did.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that you lose an election. Trudeau was reelected in 2021. But if the whole point of it is to get a majority, and you fail to get the majority, then you kind of lost the election.
Yeah.
Or at least the I don't know, you failed at your goal.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
What's really interesting, like we've heard from Poilievre that he says, no election campaign until after the Kuzma negotiations.
Yeah,
I think that's the responsible thing to do, which it might be, but it's also probably pretty good for his party. Léger asked Canadians, when should the next election be? All right,
that's wonderful. I love this question. It's so, okay, so go ahead. Yes.
10% said now.
Now.
11% said this spring. I mean, it would be this spring if it happened now.
Yeah.
13% this fall. 49% said in 2029 as set out in fixed election date legislation. So people are still not that keen on an election.
Mm-hmm.
But the partisan breakdown was actually kind of funny.
If I may. So those who won an election now. 1% Liberal. Battling with the margin of error.
They don't want their majority. They don't want to put it at risk.
3% Bloc. 3% NDP. Okay, Greens is tiny sample. 3%. 24% Conservatives. You have a quarter of Conservatives that won an election now. Now, that number is kind of funny because we could have the cross tabs, it would be interesting to see if that 24% is also the quarter of Conservatives who are satisfied with the Carney government. Because perhaps they figure, let's just get it over with and we can change leader afterwards. Dear Conservatives, you do not want an election now. Mark Carney you may not like what he's doing, but he's won the election, and the time he's spending as prime minister is time you can do to rebuild, to help build up. If you have an election now, you probably will lose, and that's the end of it would be the end of Pierre Poilievre's career. So, very interesting right now. 71% of Liberals don't want an election until 2029. Now, is that because they just want to be in power until 2029? Or that they're being reasonable and says we're close to a majority. I think it's a mix of both for sure. Yeah.
Well, a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush, as they say. But that's what's really interesting about this. 71% of Liberals don't want an election; they want to wait till 2029. Only 25% of Conservatives want to wait till 2029.
Yeah.
So Conservatives either are fatalistic or they truly believe that they would turn things around. And this is really kind of interesting because it's counter to actually where Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party is right now. They don't want an election now because they understand they need time.
Yeah.
But their own voters still would prefer to take a shot at getting rid of Mark Carney. But again, here, we talk a lot about whether there should be a new election, if Carney should try to take advantage of these numbers. You look at these numbers, and you got to think that some of the 71% of Liberals who say, let's wait till 2029, they're probably not too committed to the party. Because let's say if Léger is correct, then 49% of Canadians would vote Liberal. That means that there's an extra 6% that are newly voting Liberal, at least. They might be in that 71%. They might not want to see an election right now. So you could kick off an election. People don't really, within the own Liberal base, don't want it. And then suddenly you're down 5 points and the majority's back in question.
Go. Exactly it. It would be incredibly risky, but if you're in the PMO and you're a strategist for the Liberals, you have the itch. You look at these numbers and you go like, they're not going to get better with time. We're peaking right now. But we've talked about this several times, you and I, governments that go into snap elections can be punished by voters for seemingly being opportunistic, except when it's Conservatives. When it's Liberals, when it's NDP, it can happen. If I may just add something, because last week in our show, the title was about a Liberal surge in Alberta.
Yeah.
There was many polls that showed a very close race in Alberta, of all places. And we should mention, this poll from Léger, 128 respondents in Alberta, 56 Conservatives, 37 Liberal. Now, 37 Liberal is incredibly good for the Liberals in Alberta historically. 56 would be for the Conservatives. I mean, it would match what the UCP gets in a provincial election, right? But these are far more reasonable numbers, I think. And I don't want to say the others were not reasonable. What's the word I'm looking for? It feels more plausible that, yes, the Liberals are up, but they're not tied with the Conservatives in Alberta. And despite this, they have this huge 14-point national lead. So.
Yeah. And I wanted to note that because we made it a focus of last week. So Ipsos has it as 49-36 in Alberta.
Yeah.
So again, a Conservative lead, but certainly a lot closer than it was in the last election. A Liaison has 48-38 in Alberta. And Abacus had it as 57-32. So what we're seeing is some disagreement, I would say, on where the Conservatives are. Are they in the high 40s or in the mid 50s, that kind of thing? But there is seemingly some consensus that the Liberals are above 30 in Alberta and closer maybe to 40 than to 30. So, it probably doesn't mean they're winning 18 seats, but it does certainly mean that they have a shot to, I'd say, at least double their current holding of 3
from 2 to 4.
Well, they have Généreux, that's 3 now, so they could go up to 6. But I do think that these numbers show that there has been movement in Alberta. Is it a toss-up race? Probably not. But certainly I think there might be a few Conservative MPs in Calgary and Edmonton who would be a little bit nervous and would probably be among those who say, let's wait till 2029 for an election, if you please.
Eric, if I may, just before we change subject here, because we have provincial polls to get to, but before we go off of this, in 3 weeks, the NDP will have a new leader.
All right.
Right? Yeah, right. In this poll, NDP, 5%. Now, we should state that we, Eric and I, are big believers in the polling averages. It's just that Léger pulls a little more weight than other pollsters because they've been so great in the past decade. 5% for the NDP nationally in this one. 4 in Atlantic Canada, 4 in Quebec, 4 in Ontario, 8 in the prairies, 8% in the prairies. 4 in Ontario, 4 in Alberta, and 7 in BC. I think 7 in BC hurts more than 4 in Ontario. 7 in BC is half basically of what they had in the election, which was a disaster. So if the NDP gets 7% in BC, they're not winning any seat.
No.
They would lose Kingsway. They would lose Vancouver. Well, Vancouver East. It would close. It would be tough.
Especially if the Liberals are at 50 in BC, I think they're probably winning Vancouver East.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
the other polls, just
hang on.
in Ipsos. Wait, 8 in Ipsos, 9 in Liaison, 11 in Nanos, 7 in Abacus. So they're not much better than 5.
Not much better than 5. Okay, so but if we take, let's say we take Léger poll and have a little fun here. Well, that's not fun, but do the NDP win any seat with these numbers?
Well, if they lose their 3 in BC, I mean, what was that? How much did they have in Alberta? I don't have it.
It was single digits, but maybe they would probably hold on to Strathcona with these numbers, probably.
I think that'd be it. And assuming Boulris isn't running again.
No, well, yeah, I think that's been established. So Nunavut is gone. Nothing in Ontario. Nothing in Atlantic Canada. I mean, Vancouver, Winnipeg Centre was Ms. Gazan. That was a close one too. She would be gone with this. Mm-hmm. So the NDP would be wiped out, basically. It would be the Edmonton Strathcona party. So the
led
NDP
by Avi Lewis with McPherson as the only MP.
Jeez, so that's going to be something to watch. I again trust the average. It's just that Léger was pretty spot on with the NDP being lower in the election. You and I think we had an average of 8 and 9% for the NDP last year at the end of the campaign, and they had 6. Yeah. So next leader has a tall order in front of him or her. So.
Yeah, and not only for the NDP, the Conservatives are praying that the NDP gets back into the game to sap some Liberal support. And you and I will both be in Winnipeg, and we're planning to do some extra episodes of the podcast at the convention, maybe before the vote comes in and after the vote comes in. So keep an eye out for that at the end of the month. And it'll be my first time to Winnipeg, so I'll be looking forward to it. All right, let's talk about some of the provincial polls. Quebec, I think, was the one that grabbed the most attention because it's now a 1-point race.
Rightfully so. So new Léger poll follows last week Palace data poll in Quebec. And basically, both pollsters see the same trends. Now, the numbers are a bit different because Léger has an even closer race. So Léger, the top line numbers, 31% Parti Québécois, 30% for the Liberals, up 3 points, including up 3 points among Francophones. Conservatives at 15%. CAQ at 13%. Now, this is the first time that Léger has the CAQ behind the Conservatives, and this is the lowest CAQ number from Léger since before they were in power. And, might we remind our listeners and viewers, CAQ is in the middle of a leadership race to choose the new premier. Québec Solidaire, 9. Sovereignty, tanking. Not good news for Parti Québécois. 26% in favor of sovereignty, 65% against, 9 undecided. Before I get to the seat projections, Eric, I'm sure you took down this poll. What did you make of it?
Well, yeah, it is certainly getting much more competitive. It now, I think, with the 20-point lead the PQ still has among Francophones, they are still the favorite to win the election. But the sovereignty numbers, I think, were the ones that were just the most problematic for the PQ because it is their platform major proposition number one. Yep. And after the redistribution of undecideds, 29% support, 71 against.
Yeah.
And I think I saw one headline saying these were the lowest sovereignty numbers since the 95 referendum.
Yep.
But before the 95 referendum, they were still in the 40s. I don't know if you know what it is, but I got to believe that the support for sovereignty hasn't been in the 20s since
Meech Lake.
Before it's got to be before that.
Before Meech Lake, yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you got to go to the early 70s to find a 20. I just don't know if you can go that back because like people got to remember they got 40% in the 80 referendum, right? Yeah. And the cruising altitude for sovereignty when it's not popular is usually more around 35. It's not sub 30. So this is just a remarkable number. Just to see the opposition with the number starting with a 7, did not expect to see that anytime soon. So that to me is the biggest number from the poll.
I think the amplitude of what you're saying, the amplitude of the opposition to sovereignty is surprising. The trend really is not. The Parti Québécois has lost support since the fall. We had polls in the fall that had the PQ at 38% in the province and like in the mid-40s among Francophones. And in the Palace poll last week, we saw that M. Plamondon's personal numbers also took a hit. 46% of respondents had a negative opinion or unfavorable opinion of M. Plamondon. So even though he's kind of the most liked leaders, he's also very much disliked by a big chunk of the electorate. And so it's hard to become premier when before becoming premier you have a net negative favorability rating. What you said about Francophones is important. So 38% or 39%, sorry,
39,
for the Parti Québécois among Francophones, 19 for the Liberals. So that's 20 points ahead among Francophones. That's huge. That's enough to win the election. That's enough to be almost sure to win the most seats. But I did a little digging up, my friend. And I was trying to think of, I said before, like this election that we're going to have in October has no precedent, right? Well, what's the closest precedent? It's strange how close, if we look at the numbers right now, take the Conservatives and the CAQ together. And I know they're not together, and I know they dislike each other, but take them together. That's really close to the 2012 election, right? Won by the Parti Québécois. Pauline Marois became premier, first woman premier of Quebec. Grand victory, but it was a minority. And I went
and
looked,
wasn't it?
54 to 40, that's right.
54 to 50, yeah.
54 to 50, yes. So I went into that election and dug up the last Léger poll of the campaign. Now, it did underestimate the Liberals a little bit. Léger had the Liberals at 27. They finished with 31. Nevertheless, in that poll, Léger had the PQ at 33%. And in the election, they got exactly 33%. It was right on. Among francophones, Eric, the PQ was at 38. 20 points ahead of the Liberals. The Liberals were at 18% among francophones.
Ah, interesting.
So this is really close to what we're saying. Obviously, Québec solidaire is, well, it's not doing that great right now, but it's doing better than 2012. The Conservatives exist. The CAQ is not going anywhere right now. But there is a way that even with a 20-point lead, the PQ falls short of a majority if this goes on. So I updated my Quebec projection. Now, those who listen to this, you have the exclusivity because it will be in L'Actualité today, but it's not out yet. So I'm telling you right now. These are averages, of course. Parti Québécois, 63 seats. You may know what the threshold is for a majority. It's 63. It is 63. So they're basically à cheval. They're like straddling.
Straddling, yeah.
Yes, that's it. Liberals, 45. Pretty good projection for the Liberals at 45. Conservatives, 11. 1 seat short in the average of the threshold for official party status. Québec solidaire, 6. CAQ, 0. This would be a toss-up between PQ majority and PQ minority. And who knows? I mean, the numbers are moving right now. So who knows where it'll be in a month or two, but this is what this is the snapshot of right now.
Yeah. Anyway, that's why you can't call an election a year ahead.
Oh, no.
I mean, the contexts are different, but, Pierre Poilievre and Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon might have more in common than they would have thought.
I mean, I can't imagine the PQ blowing this. Like, they should be playing safe, but they're not playing it safe right now. But we'll see. We'll see.
All right, let's move on to two other polls. We got one from Palace Data out in British Columbia. They had done one just before the budget, and now this was one post-budget. The budget did not seem to go over very well.
No.
Palace found there was more people who did not like the budget than liked the budget. And the survey finds 42% for the NDP, 40 for the Conservatives, 11 for the Greens, 5 for 1BC. It was a 5-point lead for the NDP in their previous survey.
Yes.
Now it's 2 points. You could quibble that it's maybe just movement within the margin of error, but not the direction that David Eby would prefer.
No, and the NDP at 42, we mentioned this. The NDP at 42 is not good. It's not enough, right? Especially if the Greens stay in double digits. And obviously, we should state again that, yes, there is a Conservative leadership race going on in BC. So right now, the poll uses the Mr. Halford, the interim leader. They will choose a new leader in May. It's an interesting race, very different candidates and different ideas, but the Conservatives have a real shot here of if they choose wisely to really take over voting intentions, because there is weakness in the NDP, and yes, Palace did see that many voters, including NDP voters, are not that thrilled with that latest budget. It feels like the end of a cycle in BC. The NDP took power after a very close election in 2017. It's hard to see the NDP recovering that much before the election, but we'll see. So very interesting stuff from. Did you want to talk about the leadership race for the Conservatives?
Well, just quickly, one of the deadline passed, so that we're now down to 9 candidates. The next deadline is like a fundraising one in I think in April 1st, around there. So that might be the next call, but there's now down to 9, and the poll just more or less shows that this is still. In terms of what the members are thinking, who knows? But in terms of Conservative voters, half of them are still undecided. I think a lot of it is still largely name recognition, and even then, I don't think these are the most name recognized names. So, but the poll had Caroline Elliott still leading with 15% as the favorite, and then 9 for Peter Millibar, 7 for a bunch of others, and so it's still there's no clear front runner from the public's point of view.
No,
what's happening inside of the party, I haven't the faintest idea.
It's gonna get clearer, I think, once. I mean, we will have debates, although I'm not sure what a debate with 9 people on stage will look like. We had the federal conservatives.
Federal conservatives had 15 or 14
right?
at one point. I watched those debates.
Yeah, that's not a lot of speaking time for all, right? So, but yeah,
you each get to say one word, and then the next person has to continue the sentence. That would actually be a lot of fun.
It's anybody's race right now in BC, and we know we have a lot of members in our Discord that are in BC that are following this race closely, and so I feel reading their takes is very interesting. And I'm reading far more BC news than usual, so I'm really enjoying reading these news right now, learning about BC. And Palace, which had done really well in the 24 election in British Columbia, seems to have a regular rhythm in British Columbia, so we'll have plenty of numbers to decipher over the next few months.
Speaking of plenty of numbers, Abacus is putting out a series of polls on Alberta, and the first one came out today, and they're promising some provincial voting intentions and federal voting intentions over the next couple of days. So by the time you listen to this, maybe you should head over to the Abacus website, and they'll have the new numbers. But had some numbers on independents. Quebec, Alberta, I mean, they're pretty much the same these days.
26% would support independence, including on the side, it's exactly Léger's numbers in Quebec. It's just that when you look at the strongly agree of independence, it's actually 13. And again, sometimes you scratch and you under the surface and you see the real support. Look at the strongly agree that Alberta should become a sovereign country, and the strongly disagree. So it's 56 strongly disagree, 13 strongly agree. This is not close. It's not marginal. I'm not saying it's marginal, but this is not close. And it has to be handled, let's just say, by Danielle Smith. It'll be very fascinating to see how she handles that over the next few months.
Really interesting question that Abacus included here was how they think various leaders would vote on a referendum on Alberta independence. And on the one hand, I don't think it's surprising to see the numbers for Smith. On the other hand, I think it's actually good news for Pierre Poilievre. So 53% of Albertans think that Danielle Smith would vote for departing, vote for independence. Yeah. Only 29% think that she would vote to stay in Canada. For Pierre Poilievre, it was 22% who believed he would vote to separate, and 57% who thought that he would vote to stay. That, to me, I think is good news for Pierre Poilievre in Alberta because sovereignty is not popular, and if he is seen as being in any way associated with it in the same way that the UCP and Danielle Smith is, that would be really problematic, not only for him in Alberta, but elsewhere. But I find it interesting that the public does seem to be picking up on his message that he is opposed to it. So that's good news, I think, for Pierre Poilievre.
About these numbers, Eric, I would also point 16% of respondents believe that former Alberta Premier and federal conservative minister Jason Kenney would vote for separation. Mm-hmm. Have you heard Monsieur Kenney talk in interviews? Have you seen his social media? Have you seen anything that he has said or written in the past year? That 16% I think is a bit mistaken. Monsieur Jason Kenney is not voting for separation, so come on.
It is a bit of a reminder that it's sometimes useful to have a baseline to understand people's understanding of something. Because this poll found that 6% of Albertans think Nad Nenshi would vote to separate.
God.
No. So it's almost like we should assume that at least 6% of the electorate really doesn't have any idea what they're talking about when it comes to this. So that kind of puts it into some perspective, right? Because clearly Nad Nenshi's going to vote to remain in Canada.
Yeah. So is Rachel Notley, right?
So is Rachel Notley. There it's around 7%. Yeah. So it is a little bit of a reminder that what people think sometimes kind of so wrong that it's a reminder that we have to keep that in mind when we're talking about polls, especially on issues. When we started off talking about international affairs, I would imagine that it's there's always going to be a chunk of people who don't really follow politics closely enough to really have much of a clue. But you know what? They still get to vote, so it still matters what they think. But really interesting kind of approach from Abacus. Looking forward to seeing what else they have, especially the provincial numbers. We've seen lots of the consensus is that the UCP is leading in Alberta, but it's not clear to me whether they're way ahead, slightly ahead. It just varies from poll to poll, so we'll see what else Abacus has. All right. Number of the week?
Number of the week, if I may go first.
Yes.
I'm going back to that Léger poll this morning. I mentioned the satisfaction number. Now, Léger does poll both satisfaction and approval. And I know we usually get different numbers from both. And I know, but I'm not sure I would, maybe it's a translation. I'm not sure I would necessarily know the difference much. Approval and satisfaction. Do you approve if you're dissatisfied, or are you satisfied if you disapprove? I'm not sure. But anyway, 27% of Conservatives approve of Mark Carney's performance. Not are satisfied with the government, but approve of Mark Carney. And also nearly half of Bloc voters. This is something to watch also for the by-elections that are coming up. There will be 2 by-elections in Quebec, we think. The second one is not confirmed in Rosemont-Petite-Patrie, but we think it's coming. If half of Bloc voters approve of Mark Carney, Yves-François Blanchet cannot go on a campaign full-on attacking Mark Carney. He has to find a way to say, we'll defend Quebec interests, as they always do, but it's going to be a labyrinthe, a maze for him to navigate. And for the Conservatives, again, a quarter of them approve of Mark Carney. That's pretty good. I don't remember a quarter of Liberals approving of a Conservative leader in a long time. So
Yeah. All right. So my number of the week is based on floor crossing. Ipsos had some polling questions on floor crossing, and it found that a majority of Canadians, I think it was something like 2/3, think that if you cross the floor, you should immediately go to by-election. And anyway, so there's numbers on that. But then there was another question, which I thought, to me, whenever I see these floor crossing questions, people react in a way that they're very negative about it. They don't like it. And then it seemingly has zero impact on whether they actually hold it against anybody. Anyway,
Yep.
So 37%, that's my number of the week. 37% in the Ipsos poll found that the fact that Carney had gained 3 floor crossers from the Conservatives made them like Mark Carney more. The fact that he had 37% said that those floor crossers improved their view of Carney and the Liberals. Yeah. Only 23% said it made them less approving of Carney and the Liberals. So he did gain from the floor crossing. For Pierre Poilievre, 22% said it made him look better. 34% said it made him look worse. So Canadians were reacting in a way that was, they saw the floor crossing and it improved their view of Mark Carney. The same poll said, though, that 41% agree, 59% disagreed with their own MP crossing the floor. So a majority of Canadians would disagree with their MP crossing the floor, but a plurality were of the view that this made Carney look better. So I just find it's all these contradictions, these internal contradictions.
Yeah.
And, when we've looked at floor crossing and what impact it has on an election, it's very rare that it penalizes the floor crosser and the party that lost the floor or that gained the floor crosser. So people's views on this does not align with their behavior. And
partisan brain. Partisan brain.
Point. Anyway.
Yeah.
I just like to.
It's interesting. Yeah.
I like it when a poll kind of points out that we're complicated beings that don't always follow through. We don't do straight line ticket voting when it comes to lots of issues.
No, we don't.
We're complex. So that'll be it for this week. So thanks a lot to all our listeners and viewers. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can go to thenumberspod.ca. This week we had a mailbag episode that was up on Monday, so if you'd like to listen to that, you can go to thenumberspod.ca and join the Patreon, support the podcast, get access to the Discord, early and ad-free access to all the episodes. You've heard me say this before. Next week, I think because of this Léger poll, we're going to do another episode of Les Chiffres.
Yep.
Just lots to talk about, so we're going to delve into it deeply, so you can check that out probably on Monday. And Philippe, just want to wish you a good weekend, and we'll chat next week.
Absolutely. Come practice your French on Monday, Les Chiffres. It's going to be fun. Eric, thank you very much. Everybody, have a great weekend. Thank you.